My name is Evelyn Sprouse, Rowe, and I'm an acrylic painter. I like working with acrylic paints. It seems I've done some multimedia stuff over the past years, and I've enjoyed doing acrylic paintings most of all, so I'm concentrating on that. And we'll kind of go into a painting today to demonstrate how to simply start a painting, work through it, and also finish it. The painting will probably take me about half an hour, and I'm just going to talk about what I do when I first sit down to do a painting. I will usually have something in mind. It'll be something colorful, because I do a lot with color. And even if I don't pick a subject that is colorful, I will make it colorful. So today I have some flowers that are sitting right next to me to inspire. I may not copy or draw the flower or the flower shape exactly as it is. I may end up working with the colors and the shapes to inspire me, and that is kind of a jumping off point where I will be able to then just kind of roll with the punches, kind of. So first of all, I can see that I don't have my palette, but I've got a different one. I'll use this one. I'm going to put the green that's really inspiring me on my palette. Looks like I'm getting low on this green. I'm going to have to get some more of it later. Or sooner than later, I guess. The vase, like I was saying, is a bright emerald color, and that emerald color has a lot of energy in it. So I really like that. I'm being inspired by one of the blue flowers, and I have an ultramarine blue paint. It's called Dark Ultramarine. That is very inspiring to me. There are two different yellows, really three different yellows. A medium cadmium, I think it is. Let's see. It's called primary yellow. So I'm going with that medium yellow, plus there's a very light lemon yellow that has a lot more white in it. And I'm being inspired to paint with that color today, plus yellow ochre. So I'm not laying my paint out in any real order. I realize that value is the important thing when I'm starting to get my value scale. That means that I'm mixing white with a paint that will lighten the value and reduce, I guess you'd say reduce the value to a lighter value. And you do that with your white paint. And to begin with, I've got a red that I will mix with some white, because the pink flower that I'm looking at has kind of a peach, sort of a peach color. So you can mix a lot of different paint to make colors that are not out of the tube. The out of the tube colors directly out of the tube are rather boring, but a paint that is mixed by adding white or adding the complement to that paint, it will adjust the intensity of the paint, and it will also adjust the value of the paint. So as I mentioned, one of the strongest colors that I'm looking at and being inspired by this morning, or this afternoon rather, is a peach colored poppy. So in order to satisfy my need to put down the peach color, I will just basically get it on there. I'm not too concerned about the whole balance or structure or perfect composition of the painting. I'm not going to let the flower dictate too much. It's dictating a shape and it's dictating a color, but I'm not too concerned with it being exactly like the flower I'm looking at. As I glance over, there will be some things that are similar, but it doesn't have to look exactly like that. Okay. Besides that pretty peach that I've got on my canvas, there's some really pretty yellow forms that I want to get in to the painting. And so I will pick the light yellow and I'll apply the light yellow in smaller shapes to kind of balance the large shape that I have on the canvas. Now I'm thinking about background a little bit. And I'm thinking about what I want to see as I develop the painting. Some things will have more detail, some things will have less detail. I'm thinking about some of the green that you have when you are painting floral. You have quite a bit of different green going on in the painting. I might not paint, like I said before, an obvious literal flower or a literal leaf that I see, but I might just pick up some of the green in shapes. So the shapes that I put down are put down because I'm trying to balance some of what's already put down on the page or on the canvas. There'll be some different kinds of greens happening, and one good thing about acrylic paint is that you can go over it. And when you go over your acrylic paint, sometimes what we call a mistake might even be a happy mistake because it will help build paint onto the canvas, and that's very important to actually build the paint on. I'm adding a little bit of the dark yellow ochre to the center of the flowers that are smaller, and I'm just kind of painting some of the shapes and colors that are inspiring me. This may be a fairly simple painting when I get done with it. The basic shapes that I've worked into the piece, the big, large shapes, and then how they work with the background. Will be sort of the challenge for me a lot of times is to simplify my background so that it doesn't detract from the star of the show, which is the plant or the flower or the shape that I'm actually trying to enhance. So right now, as I'm thinking and talking, which I don't always do that really well together, I've come across an orange that I like a lot, and I think I'm going to put that into part of my background. And as I do that, I realize that it doesn't have to be the end-all color. If the orange I'm putting in the background becomes a turquoise, that's okay, because what I'm going to have is going to be sometimes a color that is under the complementary color. And sometimes when you have something sparkling through, like the red sparkling through on the edges, if I had a green or a blue over the top of that, it would make a very interesting type of application, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So as I add to the background the yellow ochre that I'm putting into the background with some of the orange on it, will kind of give some interest and change our background color so that it isn't strictly a tube color, but 2 or 3 tube colors that are worked together. And maybe even the value by adding some white into those 2 or 3 tube colors will give an interesting sort of change, I guess you could say, moving from one color to the next, so it doesn't become too boring. And the color out of the tube by itself is often a little bit too boring. So if I'm able to really look at putting in 2 or 3 reds or 2 or 3 greens or 2 or 3 blues, it just keeps the interest going. I've got a different blue down here, and I'm going to kind of play with this greenish blue. Blue is a complement of orange. So, I don't know if I'm going to get paint out of my tube or not. I think I'm going to get a little. But blue is my complement of orange. And I want to see some different color in the foliage. So I'm changing a little bit here to adding some different blues into the foliage. If you use a canvas that has a wraparound, it's good to go ahead and extend your colors and what you're doing out onto the edge so that you get kind of a consistency of what's happening in your subject matter will cover, or your subject matter will be represented appropriately, I guess you could say. I want to keep it interesting and look for some very pretty forms and shapes and work them together in a composition. Sometimes the muddier colors that we make with mixing blue with orange, we can get a deep kind of almost like a burnt umber, which is more of a brown tone. So sometimes we may find a new color just by letting colors move into, not cleaning your brush off entirely, but letting colors come together in a natural way. I squint my eyes a lot when I paint because it gives me the ability to see the lights and the darks a little bit better and what's going on in the painting to make balance. Not only are we talking or thinking about color or value of color, we're also thinking about the composition of the painting, and I don't want to go into too many details at this point in the painting, but the smaller color or the smaller shapes generally are the details, and the larger shapes are your subject matter that you're trying to represent in your painting. And so when you tighten up and start to finish a painting, you are squinting a lot more. I as an artist am squinting because I am trying to actually look for the parts that might be out of balance. I've left quite a bit of white between my colors, and my shapes, and as the paint dries, I'll go in there with what I call a glaze, and the glaze is something that you put over the dry paint like a very bold yellow, and it will go into the cracks that I've left that are white, and therefore it kind of finishes the painting and also gives highlights. So we like to see the light shining, and as we paint, or as I paint, I like to paint light into the painting. And I don't actually know how I'm going to do that, but the acrylic paint does allow for one to cover a lot of the different things that, what do I want to say, the acrylic paint allows you to cover one color and introduce another color. It allows you to put the details in over, but a lot of times we do have to be patient and let the paint dry a little bit, because there are places that we don't want to, what would you say, places on the painting where you want the color to be fresh, and you don't want to mix the green with the red, but there are places that the green and the red mixed together make a very interesting, warm kind of, it can bring unity to a chopped up piece. It can bring kind of, when you mix the colors, the complementary colors, again, it can bring some neat shadows into the piece. You can see some of the foliage takes on a brown color, which is rather natural, and you won't get that natural feeling unless you do get some mixing of complementary colors. A lot of my paintings that I've done recently are paintings of just playing with line and playing with color and shape and movement. I really like to see movement. So you'll notice I do some diagonal elements, and sort of, when I sat down here, I had the idea I was going to use the color of the vase, but I never integrated the vase into the painting. Instead, I just used the color that was inspired by the vase and put that into my floral part, not floral, but my foliage, the part that is the foliage. And I will continue using lighter and darker greens, variations, I guess, of green, 2 or 3 different variations of green to make interest in the piece. And interest develops also by, well, I guess I was going to say like by experimenting. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with the piece, but I do know that as the piece dries, it'll give me a chance to work a glaze over the parts of the canvas that have not been painted on, which are the little white lines that I've allowed to exist and not put paint there. This might stem from my background in watercolor painting. I did a lot of watercolor painting, and so as I paint in acrylic, I also utilize the white of the surface. Just like with the watercolor, you utilize the white of your watercolor paper and you don't use the tube white. Most traditional watercolorists use only the paper for the white in the painting. Well, I'm going to say that this is the piece I painted for you today, and it will have some changes made to it, but not too many. Mostly just going in with a glaze of yellow and some bright green, and maybe cleaning up a little bit of the brush strokes where I want to refine and put a little bit more detail. So for all practical purposes, this is a completed painting in, I guess, about a half an hour.